There's a lot of low-budget enameled cast iron Dutch ovens that sound promising, but after just a short amount of time using them, disaster strikes. But we know that not all budget-friendly buys are like that. Sometimes you do find some gems. And I've found one that I've used now for 4 years. It's been wonderful, reliable, dependable, and I stand fully behind it. So here's my updated review on the Amazon commercial enameled cast iron Dutch oven and why I think you should definitely consider it for that sub $100 budget friendly category. Spoiler alert, it's a lot less than that. Let's dive in. Dutch ovens, and in particular cast iron Dutch ovens, and recently enameled cast iron Dutch ovens, have been around and very popular for a long time, for as long as cast iron has been around or cast iron skillets have been around. Now, the reason why people love them so much is for the same reasons and same properties that people love cast iron pans. It's the mass. It's having that heat retention because of its sheer mass, which makes it a very viable cooking tool, a cooking instrument. Now, in particular, you're probably wondering, in modern times, why do people still use heavy cast iron Dutch ovens and enameled cast iron Dutch ovens? There's things now out that are coated with Teflon and promise to be non-stick, and I'm not a fan of that stuff. But, there's also stainless steel pots and pans, and there's aluminum and all this other stuff. So why is cast iron so popular till this day? It's because the results speak for themselves. My enameled cast iron Dutch oven is probably one of our most prized cooking instrument in the kitchen. My wife and I absolutely love it. We actually fight over it when we both need it. And trust me, I have many different other options. Now, this 6-quart stock pot is much lighter than my Dutch oven, but it acts very, very differently. And sure, it offers all the benefits that stainless steel offers, like being very responsive to temperature change. But it doesn't have that magic that my enameled cast iron Dutch oven has. What is that magic that everybody speaks of? It's really hard to quantify. But because of the sheer mass, when you're doing low and slow cooking, braising, and, just trying to get that fall off the bone texture, a cast iron Dutch oven just seems to do it better than any other cooking instrument without using a pressure cooker or anything like that. I'm talking about just, a pot and pan, right? The basics to cooking. For me, a Dutch oven mimics underground cooking almost perfectly. And it just has that heat retention and the ability to really get down into low temperatures and maintain those low temperatures that other pots just simply can't do. So let's get back to the Amazon Dutch oven. And I made a mistake in the intro. It is not made by Amazon Commercial. It's actually even a lower grade than that. It's made by Amazon Basics. This video is not sponsored by Amazon. Amazon did not provide anything to me. They have no clue I'm making this video review. My original review was not sponsored by Amazon. This is something that I bought 4 years ago as an experiment to see if it was any good, because my original Lodge Dutch oven had failed, and I was pleasantly surprised. Speaking of Lodge, this Amazon Basics Dutch oven is directly competing with Lodge's cheaper budget Chinese-made enameled Dutch oven. It's almost an exact copy for a lot cheaper. I also suspect that they're probably made in the same factory. Now, the Lodge Dutch oven is usually around $80. This is much lower than that, and we'll get to the cost later. So let's talk about how it's held up. For the last 4 years, we have abused this thing. It's stained. It even has a couple of chips where the cast iron is completely exposed. And I'm going to talk about that in a second because it's still held up very well. The inside of it is also stained, but there is no chipping in the coating. There's some scratches in the coating, but the coating overall is very well intact. And just based on looking at this, it probably has maybe another 1.5 to 2 years of use, heavy use out of it. The outside of this Dutch oven is in perfect shape. There are no any of the coating coming off. The underside of it is fine. The enamel looks really, really good. I'm actually really surprised for the price, after 4 years of heavy use, just how well this Dutch oven has held up. So what about performance? It's held up great visually, but how does it perform? It's performed great. It's performed as good, if not better, than similar Dutch ovens that I've owned previously. There is an exception. There are more expensive Dutch ovens, premium Dutch ovens that, yeah, you're going to get a little bit more in those corner cases, but most people won't be able to tell. As far as temperature control, this Dutch oven has been able to easily manage low temperatures for braising, chilies, fall off the bone characteristics that you would expect from a Dutch oven. Heat retention has been fantastic. I've done a couple of tests where I've heated it up and taken it off and just kind of waited to see how long it held its temperature and at what temperature. It's very equivalent to the Lodge counterpart and other Chinese manufactured sub $120, $100 Dutch ovens. As far as the coating and staining, this is actually pretty common. All Dutch ovens will have some form of staining, and the staining doesn't necessarily affect performance at all. You could spend some time scrubbing the stains out, but honestly, it doesn't bother me. It's not coming off. It's not going into my food. What's more important is the enamel is still intact, and the enamel is not peeling off or going into my food. Overall, the coating, the enamel has been flawless. The non-stick properties that you would expect from enameled is all still there. There has been zero issues on the performance side. And again, one of the most important things with Dutch ovens is being able to shoot up in those high temperatures to do some searing, but also being able to drop the temperatures very, very low to a very low simmer and maintain them. And this Dutch oven can do it. Another important thing is the lid, and how well does the lid seal? Now, the fit of the lid has been pretty good. It's not extraordinary, it's not airtight, but it's been pretty good. Overall, I found that the lid has held up pretty well, and most of the time when I start to notice failure, I usually start to notice it in the lid. The enamel starts coming off, it starts chipping, there's large gaps, things like that. And I haven't seen anything that should be a cause of concern. The lid has always done a fantastic job with these dimples here of redistributing moisture as it should. I haven't had any issues with rusting around the lid. The lid is actually in fantastic condition. I'm looking at it right now. There are zero flaws, zero issues with the lid, except for one chip, which was user error. Probably one of us accidentally dinged this thing. And even the chip itself, I don't see any rust forming. I can't see any rust forming. Yeah, I don't see any rust forming. That chip happened a long time ago, which brings me back to rust. This enameled cast iron has zero rust. Nowhere on it. Not on the handle, not on the lid, not on anywhere in the body or inside of it, nothing. There is zero rust, and we have not been very delicate with it. I mean, I've left it in the sink. I know, that's not good. I've left it in the sink a couple of times. The enamel has clearly protected this cast iron Dutch oven. And that's a big deal. I mean, when you're buying something like this, it's really the enamel. I'm not worried about the cast iron. The cast iron, even if it was cheap cast iron material, it's going to take a beating. It's the enamel that's going to go. And whatever they did, it held up. And speaking of whatever they did, this is made in China. Just like Lodge's cheaper Dutch oven, it's also made in China. I've heard some horror stories of the Lodge one where, for whatever reason, it just wasn't manufactured correctly or done right, and quality control was a concern. Now, I think Lodge has fixed it, though, to be fair. And I do remember initial release of this, actually after I did my review and it gained some popularity, there was also some quality issues. But I know now that it's pretty solid. I haven't seen any issues here, which makes me think that they're actually made in the same plant. But that's just a theory. I can't confirm it. Now, if you prefer to buy US made items, then you wouldn't be looking at this, and you wouldn't be looking at the Lodge counterpart that's made in China also. You'd be looking at either the Lodge made in America Dutch oven, which is like $200, or maybe even the higher budgeted stuff like made in, or even higher, which will run you about $500. The last thing I wanted to talk about was ergonomics. This is kind of where we start kind of nitpicking, right? The lid handle's fine, very short. I have big hands, and it's always something where, I got to make sure I grab it correctly. I wouldn't be grabbing it with my bare hands like this. I'd be wearing gloves. So you do have just enough to get under there. But the handle has held up fine. I've never had to tighten up this screw. This screw has always been fine. Right? It's never gotten loose on me. None of that. It's been rock solid. It's rock solid right now. The downsides, though, is the handles for the Dutch oven itself. They are extremely shallow. They are not that big. There is not a whole lot of room to grab these, right? Again, I have big hands. My wife doesn't seem to care. If you're wearing gloves or something like that, it's going to be kind of hard to grab it by the handle. You're going to have to grab the entire body of the Dutch oven and use the handles as guides and supports to pour things out, things like that. Not a big deal for me. Again, it's a Dutch oven. How ergonomic can you make it? If you make the handles larger, it's going to be harder to fit and store. There's a lot of trade-offs, right? It's never going to be a stainless steel stock pot with these huge handles, right? It's never going to be that. I recognize that. I understand that. I'm happy with the ergonomics for the price. So what is the price? Currently right now, at the time of making this video, which is mid-December, it's going for $55 on Amazon. $55. The Lodge counterpart is usually around $80. And if you want to get into made in and all those other stuff, it's above $150. $200, $250, maybe even $300, $500. That's how high these enamel Dutch ovens can get. And actually, there's even some handcrafted ones that go $1,000+. So what are you getting when you're leaping that high in price? It starts to get very, again, fine-tuned, nitpicky. Ergonomics start to change. Ergonomics start to get a little better, arguably, for a cast iron Dutch oven. And then as far as performance goes, you are going to get more. I guarantee you will get more with the more expensive brands. Are you going to get $200 more? Probably not. For the average cook, you're probably not going to notice the corner cases in temperature control, temperature management, temperature response, things like that. You are going to get a work of art. Some of these Dutch ovens are absolutely beautiful. They're handcrafted, handmade, and all this other great stuff. This is not. This is mass-produced in a factory. The coating will be arguably a little bit better. And arguably, they'll last longer. We had a Dutch oven made by a famous brand. Very popular famous brand, and it was expensive. I didn't regret it at all. It was worth the price, and it lasted me almost 12 years. But for the price of the Amazon Basics, and if you are a home cook and you don't necessarily need that precision, you can buy a few of these and it's going to last you the same amount of time. There's some pros and cons to that. Some people will argue, well, you're polluting the environment. This is waste when you have to throw it away and things like that. You can recycle it though, but yeah, I get it. So it's up to you guys. Is the price worth it to you at this price point? It's not going to last you 12 years. I don't expect this to last me 10 years plus. I'll be surprised if it goes another 4 years. It's already lasted me 4 years, but I think if it does go another year and a half, honestly, if I get 5 years out of this thing, I think that's pretty good. So really the biggest cons that I see out of the Amazon Basics is it's mass-produced. It's not handcrafted, handmade. It's not going to be something that you can depend on for 10 plus years. And overall, it is targeting a budget-friendly aspect. So you are going to see budget-friendly features that do compare to other larger manufacturers, but it's not trying to compete with them. It is competing with other people in that same price category, but not the higher-end manufacturers. Honestly, my final thoughts are my wife and I absolutely love this Amazon Basics Dutch oven. It has really performed well for the last 4 years. I have kept it around because there's no reason to get anything else right now. I'm not worried about beating it up or breaking it. I'm not worried about it, being loaned out to somebody because it costs $500 and I'm afraid they're going to drop it or something like that. It really has taken abuse in our kitchen, and it has been a reliable tool in our kitchen, and that's how we use it. I can't tell you enough how much we actually do use it and abuse it, and it has withstand all of that abuse. Now, to an extent, we're not, taking a drill to it or doing anything stupid like that, or, soaking it out in the rain or something. We still take care of it, respect it, but we're not babying it, if that makes sense. And I really do think that for the budget-friendly category of under $100, and this is well under that, it's at 55, 60 bucks, maybe 65 tops, but it's definitely under 60. That's usually where I see it. How could you lose? It's an underdog, and I'm surprised that people don't mention it more often. I think it's because it's the Amazon Basics name. But I think people should give it a chance, and I think you'll be impressed. That's it for me, guys. I hope you found this video informative, and if you did, please consider subscribing and joining our channel memberships. I'll catch you in the next video.